Hey guys, coming to you from the wonderful sunny garden today. It's a nice warm bright day, so I figured I'd make a display board. Now I have to start with an apology because this is where I'm at now. My camera decided to have a bit of a spaz attack and lose some of the previous recording data, so I'm going to have to quickly recap how it's this stage, so just give me 1 second and I will get some stuff. Okay guys, so this is what we started with. This is a sheet of MDF. It's medium density fiberboard, for those that don't know what MDF stands for. It's basically a compressed cardboard, so it's really easy to work with. It's like a soft, flexible wood. This one here is 9mm thick, which gives just enough sturdiness without being too heavy or too cumbersome. As you can see, it just gets a nice sturdy thickness on it. So what I did is I cut myself a square. Obviously I put my army on it, make sure it fit. This one's going to be for my Tyranids, so obviously, you know, I put it on the guys on the board and cut out a sizable shape, and then so I cut that out with a jigsaw, and then I sprayed it black. Well, I stuck these buildings on first just to give a bit of character to the board. You don't just plain piece of wood, you want a bit of character on there. I'm going to spread the whole thing black, as you can see, like there's the black edge here. After that, I then dry brush these buildings with a bit of grey, just give them a bit of colour again, a bit of definition. Just a bit of spruce sticking out in there. It's that, okay, I have to clip that off in a minute. So yeah, then these buildings would dry brush grey, make them stand out, make them look more like buildings. And then I put a bit of sand on the board. Now this isn't going to be the finish for the board. I just put the sand on to create a little bit of extra texture. And it also gives the mixture down here something to stick to. Now this is going to be the material that I'm going to base it with. It's basically just a mix of some of these cheap pots of paint. I've used that whole orange and some PVA glue, which is there. That's the PVA glue, just sort of makes the mixture a little easier to work with, and obviously it helps the sticking process. Now I use these cheap pots of paint because obviously doing a whole surface I didn't want to use like these texture paints. Like this is what my arm is based with. This is a Citadel Blackfire Earth. So what I did is I tried as close as I could to match up the colour in there with using these cheap pots of paint. So my mixture was about 2 parts orange to 1 part brown to get almost the exact colour. And then basically what I've done is have some of this stuff. This is just a handful of assorted sands and stones and pebbles and things, and that's just mixed into the mixture. So I've sort of made my own texture paint here, and I'm just going to paint it onto the board now. So I'll get back to you when that's finished. Just a word of note, this is a makeshift kind of work stand. Basically what I've done is cover book, so I've got a bit of height, and then it stood on what is an old shelf, just so that I can get around the edges underneath, and so that when it's drying it doesn't stick down to the paper that's protecting my rather nice garden table, so I don't want to get paint on that and ruin it. So this just allows me to get a nice finish around the edge, and it stops bits of newspaper sticking onto the inside of the board, and just keeps it a nice clean finish. So I'm going to get some of this mixture on, and I'll get back to you in a second, guys. Alright, cool. Alright guys, so this is where we're at. So using a old rubbish brush, this is like a pack of brushes, like 7 brushes for £2 or something like that. This is just lathered it all on, nice and thick. There's no point being, you know, gentle about it or trying to get an even coating, because obviously things like earth and, you know, ground, sand, mud, gravel, it's not even, it's not perfect. So don't try and get it perfect unless you're going for a nice, perfect cityscape type of thing. Don't try and get it perfect, because the more mistakes and the less uneven it looks, the better it looks in the long run. So I just slapped it on, got some on the base of the buildings as well, just so they look a bit of dust swept, some around on there, around all the edge. Be sure to pay careful attention to around the edges, get a nice good seal on it. These are the edges that are gonna, you know, they're gonna take a bash in when you're moving it around, picking it up, putting it in the car, whatever. The edges are gonna take a battering, so just be sure to, you know, get a nice good coating on there. I'm probably gonna make a PVA sort of gloss varnish for it afterwards. Very, very thin watered down PVA glue, just lip it around the edge just to seal it in that little bit extra. Now if you can tell, it's a little shiny on the screen, but it's actually quite wet. Now I don't want a lot of moisture in the mix, I actually mix a little water into here, just to make it easier to work with. But on the board, don't want it too moist. Two reasons is it'll take longer to dry, is the first one, and obviously I want to get this done as quick as possible because I don't want to spend a lot of time doing it. And the other reason is if it's too moist, it can dry with like air bubbles in it, and it just doesn't look quite right. So what I'm going to do is get another one of these cheap brushes. I'm just going to like run it over the top like this. You know, get this on camera, I can do this with one hand. Just bringing some of the moisture out of the thing. Trying to, again, don't do sort of like this, like brush strokes, because you'll see it in there, and just be uneven, a bit rough with it. Then when there's some on the thing, onto paper towel. And it's sort of like, this is like reverse dry brushing, because what we're doing is we're taking moisture out, you know, off, and it just, you know, we're bringing the moisture out of the texture, and it will give it a better dry, and it will give a better finish once it's dry. So I'm just going to do this with one hand. In fact, I'll do it quickly, and then I'll put the camera for a second. Alright guys. Okay guys, so I just quickly ran over that with the brush. I don't know how well it's picking up on camera, but it's just a little less moisture now. It's a bit better coverage. Just a bit of that mist, just going to get that. So, I mean, I'm going to leave this to dry now. It's probably going to take quite a while. So obviously I'm not going to keep it on camera because it's probably going to take a good few hours to dry, and even if it doesn't, I want to give it that nice long time anyway. It's a nice warm day today, even though it's September. It's a pretty warm day. So it's just about afternoon, I think. Just check the time. 11:15. Yeah, I'm going to grab some lunch, maybe a cold beer, and then I'll come back out once it's dried in a few hours time, and we'll finish it off, and I'll let you know how it goes, guys. Okay, keep watching. Cheers, guys. Okay, so we're good and dry. I've had to move inside for the time being, guys, because I was getting some wicked glare on the camera outside in the sun. So I've just brought the camera inside, and as you can see, it's dried nice and sort of realistic looking ground. But now what we're going to do is we need to put some colour on this thing, because obviously ground and earth and grit and such like is not all one singular colour. So I'll just need to grab a few tools. Just give me 1 second, guys. Okay, I'm back. Now, what I've basing my Tyranids, the armour that's going to go on this board, I used Blackfire Earth, which is the what we've got down the display board at the moment. And then, excuse me guys, just clear my throat a bit. On top of the bases for the Tyranids, what I've done on top of the Blackfire Earth is, if you can read that there, but this is Underhive Ash, and it's Citadel Dry paint, and that has gone onto the surface of the Blackfire Earth to give it some depth. So now I'm going to do the same thing to my display board to keep the continuity going and to keep it all looking uniform. I'm not going to use this though. The pot's a bit small to get a decent sized brush in, but what I did do was, again, using these cheap pots of paint, I managed to find one that was pretty much identical. So I got quite lucky for this. And just give me a second while I open this pot of paint, guys, so I can do it with one hand. Okay, so this brand new pot of paint. It's my dining room table there. Doubles up as a workshop, obviously. Okay, so put the lid off the paint. And again, using another one of these really cheap paintbrushes. I said earlier, I bought a really cheap pack of paintbrushes just simply because doing a project like this is really going to hammer paintbrushes, so there's no point using expensive ones. They've got like nice soft bristles anyway, which makes them good for working with. So this is all I'm going to do is we're going to dry brush a layer of this onto the board. I'm just going to pause the camera for a second while I do that, because it'll allow me to do it quicker. So I'll catch you in a second, guys. Alright, so the texture is on. I think you can kind of see the stones there, and the texture of the board stands out a little bit now with that dry brush on. It's starting to finally come together. I'm really pleased with the way it's set up. So I'm just a bit close to the board here, guys. There's just a few brush bristles on the board. I know that's the only peril of using a cheap brush, is it does tend to shed bristles here and there. I'll pick them up in a second. The board's But yeah, it's looking pretty good. It's going to take on to the final step now, so just give me 1 second. I'm just going to move this box over here, the old paint tub, to this other box. Now what I'm going to do for the final step, here's some of the stuff. This is the turf, Mordheim turf. I don't know if you read that there. Basically what I'm going to do is get some of the bigger ones here in the box and just dot them around, give it a bit of sort of foliage, again, add into the character, add into the depth, add into the levels. When I was dry brushing the board, I did a quick layer over the buildings just to sort of blend in the colour scheme a little better, because I want it to be like a dust swept ruin, and if this is the surrounding area, then the dust from here is going to lash the buildings in the wind. So that was the thinking there. Went over this thing a little bit, picked up some of the rougher stony areas, so with a double dry brush, just to give them again, just building up the layers of depth, layer of detail, just making it look really good. So I mean, yeah, it's really coming together now. So I'm going to stick some of the turf on. That's going to take a few seconds, but I need both hands to do that because I need the PVA glue, brush, tweezers, etc, etc. So it's going to be quite sort of laborious. It's simple, fairly straightforward, but it's just boring. So once I've got that done, guys, the display board will be done and I'll get back to you with the finished product. Okay, cheers for sticking around. Just a few more minutes to go. Nice one. Okay, that's that stage done with, guys. So you can see I've just dotted a few little these tufts. If you sort of gonna do a similar technique, don't worry about getting the glue on the board. Obviously PVA glue or just your standard white glue, it dries clear. So if I've got see bits of the glue there where I've stuck these bits of tufty grass on, and it'll dry clear, so you won't see it. When I place them on, I just sort of dot them around, try to think of areas like where weeds and things would grow, so like the base of the buildings here and here, and then just some dot around in the open. I didn't want to make it too busy, I just wanted them to add to the board rather than be the main sort of, whoa, look at all those grass things on there. It's just, again, add the final layer of detail, and now this board's pretty much done, so we've let that PVA glue dry, and yeah, we're ready to rock and roll. We just get some Tyranids on there once they're finished. So guys, that's the display board, made cheap. The reason why it's so cheap, I'll sort of explain to you the components of what went into it. The wood itself was probably the most expensive bit. I did buy a big 8x4 sheet of MDF. I only bought that, the reason being was I was using it for other projects around the house, so I didn't have any sort of wood wastage. But I mean, if you just want a piece of wood like this, top tip, guys, is just find your local wood merchant and go down there or call them up and just ask them for offcuts, or just say, dude, can I rummage in your skip? And you'll find these awesome cuts of wood, and sometimes they're even free. If they're offcuts or they're in the skip, you just ask the permission, you take it, it's free. So I spent quite a bit on the wood, but obviously I used it for other places. These buildings were sort of knocking around in bits box. I've bought them in the past. Obviously you don't have to. I put the Citadel buildings on. It does increase the price of it a little bit, well, quite significantly if you want to buy them new. So it's not an important part of the display board process, but I put them on because obviously it gives that 40k theme straight away to the board. Then there was just those paints, but I used all these cheap craft pots of paint. Don't be afraid to use sort of the cheaper paints. As long as you use sort of like an acrylic paint, like this is actually an emulsion paint, which makes it good. It's really thick, so it's good for dry brushing and good for using it on. This is the adhesive, because it's quite a thick paint. So don't be afraid of the cheaper paints. Just be sure to, like, I went down to the store and I had this in my pocket, and also I was just matching it up against each of the different colours to find the closest one. So just do that, just take your paints down that you want to use, and yeah, just match it up to the closest one, and you can get really cheap paints. And there's no point, wasting the Citadel paints on this, this kind of project. So moving on from that, so we've got the wood was quite an expense, the buildings would be quite an expense again, but they're not essential. And we've talked about the wood, that doesn't have to be an expense, you can get it free or very, very cheap. The paints were very, very cheap. The sand that I used is a product called Sharp Sand. sold at most hardware stores, and it's the sand that's used by builders to fill in foundations. And I got a 25 kilogram bag for £1.25 from a national retail chain. So that's dirt cheap, that's 25 kilograms. Those of you can't put that into context, think about, I don't know, 25 bags of sugar. That's the amount that I got. And again, those 1.25 was really cheap, and I only used a couple of handfuls, maybe not even that much. So that was pence. Really, really cheap to get the sand and the texture on there. So I mean, all in all, this board probably cost me. The wood was 15. The buildings are 15 as well, I believe. So that's 30. £5 on paints and brushes. So this board cost me £35. But again, I have loads and loads of the sand left over. I used the wood for other things, so there was no wastage there. And the buildings aren't essential. So I mean, if you take away the buildings, and then consider I could have got this wood for free, this board has cost me less than £10 to make, start to finish. And that's, to me, my abilities as a crafter, as a painter, this is the best probably I can do, probably, in the time I want to spend on it. Obviously, spend more time would be better, but I don't want to spend days and weeks and months doing this. It's just the board for upcoming tournament for my Tyranids, and it's completed. So I'd love to know what you guys think. Do you like this board? Any tips for me in the future? Can I get in this stuff better? Buildings, terrains, anywhere cheaper you can get it from. But yeah, that's it, guys. I hope you learned something. Hope you picked up a few tips. And yeah, making these things doesn't have to be cheap. Just make a few calls, find some cheap wood, and you're good to go. Use cheap paints. Cool. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. I'm out.